Greetings. Hello. My name is Brian Underhill, and welcome to our session, Redesigning the Future of Coaching. What does it mean for you? Now, I'd like to start first by introducing my co-panelists so you could get to know them. So we're going to have each of them say hello and say a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into the heart of the presentation. Let's start with Eva Kovacs. Eva.
Thanks, Brian, and welcome everyone. Really exciting to be here with you. So about me, I will be speaking as a former GSK internal coach who co-led the function together with Stephanie, who is also on the call. And currently I'm building my own coaching practice alongside with supervision and some consulting on internal coaching.
Wonderful. And you're in London, of course, or the UK. And Stephanie.
Thank you, Brian. It's nice to be with you today. Very nice to meet you. My name is Stephanie Laplante, and I'm here, like Evie, as a former GSK internal coach. I've also started my own coaching company called The Leadership Space, where I focus on executive coaching and team coaching.
Wonderful. And also but in the United States, East Coast area of the United States. And then we'll move to Jeff Nally.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. My name is Jeff Nally. I'm the Vice President of the Global Coach Community at CoachSource, where I help bring coaches into our community and develop and grow them and help them get connected to companies so they can be excellent coaches. I'm a formal internal coach at a healthcare company and a formal CoachSource client. And I am coming to you today from Venice, Florida. It's good to be with you.
Welcome. And then myself, my name is Brian Underhill. I'm also a coach as well, and the founder and CEO of CoachSource, a very large executive coaching provider. I've been in the field about 25 years, originally working for Marshall Goldsmith, the famous coach, coaching and managing coaching. And then we spun off into CoachSource, where we do large scale executive coaching implementations. And I'm in Northern California, Silicon Valley part of California. So thank you for joining us today on the recorded session. It won't be quite as robust as the actual session because we do have activities that the live audience would participate in. So we may reference those, but move on quickly into the rest of our content. But we hope you get some great value from two different perspectives about the future of coaching. So we're going to be talking in two different ways. One is trends in the industry. We've actually recently completed a research study that looked at various trends in the coaching industry, and we're going to share with you some of those findings. In fact, the study just came out a few months ago at the beginning of this year. So the first portion of our presentation, mostly Jeff and myself will be focusing on the research findings. After that, we'll go to what's probably going to be the much more interesting part of our presentation, probably why many of you are here, is to hear about the case study of GSK and how they redesigned their coaching program for the future. And in all honesty, they took an amazing program that won a PRISM award with the ICF and basically redid the whole thing and set it up for a whole new future. And they'll explain to us why they did that, and still a little early in the outcome there, but they'll tell us more all about that. Apologize if you're hearing a dog. It's the work from home lifestyle. Normally we would ask you who's here today, but you know who you are in terms of your background with coaching and so forth. But we hope that no matter what type of background you have, you will gain some great value from a session such as this. Now let's tell you the history of the research study, which is the first portion of our presentation, and how this research study came to be. This study actually has a history dating back to 2005, when we've been commissioned by an organization called Executive Development Associates to conduct a major research study in the field of executive coaching. It was actually one of the first of its kind, perhaps, at least in our area of executive coaching, where we looked at the industry from multiple perspectives, not just from coaches, but we also wanted to hear what organizations had to say and what executives who worked with a coach had to say. That was all done in 2005 and sort of unexpectedly led to a book about the same thing about 2 years later. We then decided to repeat the study, which was done in 2013. It was done again in 2018. And here we are now about to share with you some of the results from the 2020 study. It's a little more of an abbreviated one, and certainly one that was challenging because it was launched right around COVID and the social justice movement, particularly here in the United States. So that caused some interesting dynamics as we got this study underway. But that's what we'll share with you is really a really interesting portion of our study having to do with trends, predicted trends by those who took the research. So who did we survey? This is a listing of who was asked, and we basically had 91 organizational practice managers. So that even would be people like Eva or Stephanie when they're at GSK, the person who's running coaching for their respective organization. Mostly a larger size organization, but you know the person who's overseeing coaching is who this person is. We also looked for internal coaches, people who primarily they may have a day job, if you will, but they've been trained as a coach usually, and they're doing some amount of coaching within the organization as part of their role, either officially or unofficially. We had 75 of those answer. If you actually combine unique organizations represented in the study, you get to about 97. And then the group that was very easy to find, to have them respond to our study, external coaches. 599, we didn't have any shortage of external coaches who were interested in our results. And you know, we'll have plenty of opinions from the external coaches, as you can imagine. So 3 different perspectives. A natural question we would receive if we were together in person is, well, where did all of your respondents come from? And yes, we are a North American company, and while we have contacts in many parts of the world, you'll see that it is heavily North America favored response rater group. And then even between EMEA and APAC as the 2 other groups. But we wanted to make note of that because as you see our results, you just want to keep that in mind, since we're of course speaking at EMCC, that you're seeing more of a North American influence data set. And again, you know, keep that in context as you're reviewing our research. So let's take a look at coaching and whether it has been more or less popular over the last few years. And what do people predict might happen with coaching and popularity over the next few years? This is always a fairly reassuring slide for those, for those of us in the industry. On the left, we asked participants, companies, those managing coaching, whether their company has used coaching more, less, or stayed the same. So increase, decrease, or stay the same over the past 2 years. And as you can see here, from the companies who answered our survey, 45% of them felt that they had increased their use of coaching. 46 were continuing their same use of coaching from previous time, and maybe 9% saw a decrease. Caveat to add here, though, nonetheless, is while that's pretty great news for our field and encouraging, of course, you have to remember that all the companies that don't care a thing about coaching or don't do any coaching probably weren't going to take our survey. So you're going to have people that care more about coaching that are more likely to take the survey. And so you're going to have a natural bias in the response there. Having said that, outside research is also confirming the increased use of coaching in many different ways. And if you look at ICF research, I'm sure EMCC has done studies. Anyone I talk to, honestly, who's looking at our field of coaching is continuing to find growth in the field. And as a company who's in the coaching field, we've experienced growth for every year except for the 2008 downturn. We had one quite even or flat year more recently. And then with COVID, we had another flat year, which we'll actually consider a bit of a victory in the current environment that we're in. But leading up to COVID, I think people have been extremely positive about the future use of, or about the growth of our field. And similarly here on the right side, for the next 2 years, there's even more positivity, at least from these respondents, where 60% felt that there would be an increase in their company's use of coaching over the next 2 years. 36% predicted they'd at least continue what they're currently doing, and 4% would maybe predict a decrease. So this continues to show that the future of the field looks bright in terms of overall usage. And if you've seen any of the headlines recently about coaching firms raising money or attracting famous spokespeople for their coaching brand, you know that that should be an indication that there is continued excitement or growth expected for our industry. Now, next we're going to talk about trends, possible trends in the industry. You get a chance at home to predict what you think might be the most likely trends. Jeff is going to take us through a portion of that. So let me get you your slide here, Jeff.
Great. So everyone put your coach lens on and look at the screen and look at all of these different trends, possible trends for 2020 and beyond, the next 3 to 5 years. So we're asking in the survey, what, as an organization, what do you think are the most likely trends in the next 3 to 5 years? And I'd like you to look at this list and think about what's the most likely, the number one trend that we're going to see experienced in organizations over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, they all look like valid types of coaching. No surprise there, right? Maybe team coaching is the space where we're going to see a lot of growth. Will credentialing or certification finally rise to the top of the list and be the primary trend that's going to drive our profession? Or is it more on a focused type of group of participants in coaching, like millennial leaders? Maybe it's technology to bring coaching as a low-cost way to get coaching in organizations. All of these are really good, and you can see that any of them would be a really great trend. So I'll ask you to jot down on a little piece of paper next to you, what do you think is the number one trend? And then Brian, why don't you do the reveal for us at the next slide, and I'll take us through. Aha, it's leadership development programs with additional coaching. So if you're like me and Eva and Stephanie, who have been internal coaches before, this is probably not a surprise. If you're another type of coach, you may be scratching your head and thinking, haven't we done this already? This is not like new or cutting edge. Is this really the number one trend? It turns out, yes, when we couple coaching, whether it's one-on-one or group coaching, with a leadership development experience, and whether it's learning, all of that learning gets hardwired. We get people to practice and reflect on what they're doing. They get a coach to guide them into what it's like to implement what they learned in their development program. And that is still a valid, useful way to have coaching. So that is the most likely trend from this updated survey that organizations expect to be using coaching for in the next 3 to 5 years. So when we couple that with organizations needing more coaches and expecting to use more coaches, let's not discount the coaching that's connected with a leadership development program, whether the coaching occurs in tandem with the learning and the program, or whether it begins at the end of the learning experience for leadership, for leaders. There are going to be more opportunities for coaches based on this survey for coaching around leadership development programs. All right, so what about the rest of them? Brian, why don't you take us through all of the other items and how they fell out in the what's expected in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, and it's funny, Jeff, I actually got my start with leadership development programs when I was working for Marshall, and maybe some of you did too, in different ways. But when I was working for Marshall Goldsmith, we would show up as part of a 5-day offsite. Remember offsite leadership development program with various teachers, and then we would show up and do our 360 feedback thing. We debrief the 360 and then do one-to-one coaching with people from there, and sometimes additional coaching for the next few months. But that was exactly the way we had started doing this coaching thing.
What's interesting about this and this emerging trend is in the post-pandemic era, I think companies and leaders are re-looking at how work will be done. And in this virtual world, which we're all used to by now, we know how to turn our video on and how to mute ourselves and how to actually get real work done in a virtual environment. I also wonder if the trend is starting to emerge and continue to be at the forefront, because with the impact of leadership development, there's a synergy to help really emphasize or accelerate the learning in a virtual leadership development program. And you can do that through coaching.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very astute and very likely as well, because, you know, and we're going to see lots of shifts in our field. Of course, going virtual is the obvious one. And interestingly, you know, we're not even sure when we're going to go unvirtual in coaching. I mean, it's you know, that's just what we do now, right? And at some point we're sort of wondering, well, when can we start visiting people again? But people seem to, a lot of our coaches are really liking this all virtual approach to coaching. Let me share with you trend number 2. Also not a surprise. These two became 1 and 2 in our last study as well. Trend number 2 is teaching leaders coaching skills so that they can use more of those skills while they're coaching. And I remember the first time I got involved in one of these was quite early, actually, in the field. I would say maybe early 2000s or something, when we did a program like this. Everyone went through a 1-day coach training class. And I'm surprised that it's number 1 and 2, these two, but also not surprised because it's quite prevalent. Evie and Stephanie, you guys may probably have a lot to say on this particular trend number 2, I bet, huh?
Yeah, what I want to say is actually the two interlink, because what we found that if you train the leaders to be good coaches, it's one step on the journey. However, when they themselves experience being coached, they're more likely to coach. We actually did a bit of research on that. So the combination of following up leadership, training leaders as coaches with giving them a coaching how they're doing is helping them to embed.
Very good. Yeah, I was just reading a case study of a company where the head of HR was asked to bring a coaching culture. And the first step actually was for her to be fully trained as a coach and start coaching herself, you know, as a leader and as a coach, really. And that started to hit some of the right cylinders, that it started to influence more people in the right people in the organization. And eventually the CEO got on board and everything went in the right direction. But teaching coaching skills to leaders is a very important factor in bringing in more of a coaching culture. The next batch that we brought in are all different forms of coaching, and I'll quickly mention them, and then I know my colleagues will have a few things to say. By the way, if you're seeing a star, it means it was something you saw on the previous page when Jeff was getting you to guess what was up ahead. So that kind of tells you where your choices may have ended up. But third most popular and gaining in popularity from the last time we did our study is team coaching. And I know EMCC has a big push in the team coaching space, of course, with one of its founders being Peter Hawkins, and of course the founder, David Clutterbuck, being such a name in this area. But that comes in third place from our respondents as most likely. Group coaching makes a big jump from a previous study up into 5th place, and I know Jeff will have to say something about that. Greater use of internal coaches is in 6th place. Peer coaching is over here in 11th place, and more supervision 13th place. I do want to point out, when it says over 70, over 60, that's the percent of respondents who felt that it was highly likely or very likely the trend over the next 3 to 5 years. So for my colleagues, any interesting responses to some of these next items here?
This is Jeff. Yes, on the group coaching, I'm not surprised to see it jump. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen organizations all across the globe starting to use group coaching in a variety of ways, all the way from having a coach do group coaching just to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations of mid to upper level leaders. So they have a private, confidential space to share their wisdom and figure out what they've done well with the organization's strategy in DE&I and how they want to practice that going forward, all the way to, let's say, more structured group coaching where it's connected to a leadership development program or some other initiative like employee resource groups inside the organizations or rolling out a new corporate strategy. So the notion of group coaching, we're seeing more leveraging the wisdom of the group connected to the professional coach who is also a great facilitator and has experience in group coaching before. And as coaches, let's not forget that there is a distinction between several distinctions between team coaching and group coaching, and they're both on the rise here.
And team coaching, I have such a passion for team coaching because as a former sales leader, I know that almost everything gets done through a team. And one of the things that a lot of teams forget to do early in their forming stage is build a really solid foundation of trust and a way that they work together to share information, to have healthy conflict, to really tap into the diversity of their strengths, to unlock creative thinking. And I just see such an opportunity to help leaders who aren't necessarily trained in how to lead a team. I've seen a lot of leaders developed in how to lead individuals, but as a team coach, there's such an opportunity to help that leader develop how to lead a team, to unlock the potential of the team while helping the team to unlock their performance and learn together at the same time. It's definitely a great opportunity for the coaching community around the world.
Folks in EMEA might be surprised to see number 13, supervision, low like that. And my reminder is that our respondents are more often, of course, from North America. And some of you may be surprised to know that coaching supervision is really still in its infancy here. A lot of coaches don't know much about it, and they have sometimes the wrong notion of what supervision is. I remember speaking to a group of psychologists here in Minnesota once about the value of coaching supervision, and I think they may have revolted in the room right in front of me, which means I did a poor job of explaining it. But yeah, Eva, I know you may know a thing or two about this. I know it's just very standard for coaches in the UK and beyond, isn't it?
It's interesting because I think it's very well embedded as part of your reflexive practice. However, if you look at least ICF, it doesn't demand supervision. It recommends perhaps, but doesn't demand as upholding your credentials. So it's really interesting how the accrediting bodies are responding to that. What I've seen is in this world where there is so much pressure on everyone, actually for us as coaches, being held by our supervisor, having this space where we can return to ourselves so that we are at our very best to hold our clients, whether it's a group, whether it's an individual or a team, is almost a must, I would suggest, so that we are not caught up in all the, web of different dynamics. And I think that's incredibly important for internal coaches who are in the same system as their clients. And I've seen that in GSK. It was difficult to get coaches understand that it's all about the client, and for them to be all about the client, they really need to attend to themselves. And I think us people who love helping others, reminding ourselves not to forget to attend to our own processes, I think it's important, and it's not easy sometimes.
Absolutely. Next up, I'll go to number 4, fourth place, and we've been mentioning ICF and of course EMCC as a certification as well. And there's a few other bodies. Fourth place to see certification here, surprisingly, is actually a jump from the past as well. Oddly enough, you may be surprised to see that, but in some of our past research, especially those old studies from 2005, et cetera, certification had tended to be more on the lower side of things. And in the last few years has really gained prominence, and more of our clients than not ask for this as a standard among coaches. Whereas in the earlier days, there was less understanding of it and the value of it. And I definitely saw a movement of executive coaches who may have been coaching for a long time that decided to go and officially get certified. I know GSK requires this as well, doesn't it? Yes, so nods from my colleagues in case their cameras didn't turn on. Next up, another type of coaching focusing on the millennial leader. It depends on who you ask on this one. External executive coaches actually place this, I believe, second, maybe third, but balanced out with everyone else, it falls here in seventh. And of course, your oldest millennial leaders now are, I believe, 40-ish. So they're going to be in definitely leadership, senior leadership positions. Perhaps fairly soon, we won't even be calling it coaching for millennial leaders. It's going to be coaching for leaders because millennials will make up the majority of our workforce. Next, we're going to add three more that all talk about ways to oversee or manage coaching, which is definitely a big area of oversight for our field, because in one sense, coaching has gotten so popular. I once wrote that we're sort of a victim of our own success, because now you've created big demands to manage or oversee coaching. In some organizations, you've got a person or several people whose full-time job ends up being just overseeing coaches or coaching or contracts or expense reports relating to coaching and so forth. So you've had a rise of coach management systems to help oversee that, beginning probably 5 or 8 years ago, maybe 8 years ago or so. You would start to see these systems out in the marketplace. We'll see a list of a few of them up ahead. And along with that, you'll see organizations that are kind of trying to streamline and centralize their coaching under just a vendor or a few vendors. And that'll be part of the GSK story in just a moment. We see, as a coaching firm, we're seeing more of these types of tenders or RFPs lately for organizations that just can't handle overseeing 50, 80, 100 different coaches and their various contracts. Let's see if we can gather control over it and bring it all together. We've also added here number 10, which is a big new topic in our field. In fact, this is about apps and low-cost coaching through apps, and whether or not these would become a significant player in the industry. This study was run mid to late last year, and here it comes in 10th place. But in more recent presentations that we do, this one is often voted number one by those in the audience. And if we had a live audience today, perhaps that's what this audience may have said. So lots of momentum in this particular space in the field. And then the 14th place, which is actually low, is whether or not fees for coaching would actually decrease. If you see some of this centralization, you would expect a decrease in fees. Fees for coaches might become more of a commodity. In my experience, they somewhat are to some extent, not in a major way, but they actually are. But nonetheless, our respondents put this here in 14th place. Any responses from my panelists here on some of these new items?
This is Jeff. I think, the whole notion, because I did this as well as an internal coach, just like Stephanie and Evie did, the evolution of how we manage our coaching practices has really exploded, and the data needs and the ability to create your own dashboard and be able to share that with senior executives or show it to the talent team has always been important, but now it's even more critical. I think one of the things that as coaches that we can have a little more confidence in is that I've never met an internal coach practice leader who said, I really want all 50 of my coaches to do the same thing and to treat our leaders the same and to coach in the same way. What they really want our standard processes that every coach uses and every leader uses to get matched with a coach and to bring coaches in or to use an internal coach, but they still want the coach to do their really great, unique, dynamic work in the coach setting. So I think when we see things like coach management systems or things like that, it's not that internal coach practice leaders are trying to commoditize us. They're just trying to make the process flow and how coaching moves across the organization easier, and how coaching can be reported and how we know what's going on can be a lot easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff, you are so spot on, because I can't tell you how many times I said to business leaders once I met with them for an intake meeting to say, here's the standard process. So all you need to do is focus on you and your development. That's what this is all about. And I think, you know, there's a thing about when you hear standardization, at least for me, I'm like, ew, you know, because I want to express myself and be who I am as a coach. But then when you put it in that perspective, people say, okay, now I can focus on my development and what I need to grow as a leader. So it's an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
And to build on one point you made, Jeff, regarding data and KPIs, I think I can't emphasize that. Actually, the pain of getting and pulling the data from Excel sheets and, oh my gosh, I don't even go there. But what I wish, and become that later, is coaching management system is incredibly useful when you're managing coaching at scale, and when your stakeholders rightly absolutely want to see how are we spending the money, what's the return on investment, why shall we spend money in coaching rather than in other interventions. And when you have that data readily available, I think you really can convince your colleagues and the decision makers.
Excellent. We're going to hear more about some of this great GSK work in about 20 more seconds. So we'll finish up just to let everyone know that 12th was a prediction of further use of external coaching. And then 15th is kind of the fun one. Will artificial intelligence replace us? That's last place. But, you know, there's some thought leaders out there that are pushing us a little to be aware that this could happen. This could happen, actually. It will be replaced by AI perhaps at some point. So those are the trends here that we found from the study. I do want to say that the study is available for free. We don't charge for it. It's at CoachSource's website, coachsource.com, under thought leadership. You can pick up the study as well as the past studies for that matter. And so that gives you some view of the overall future of the industry perhaps. But now next we want to go to the good stuff, which is to look at a specific case study, of course, from GSK about how they really repositioned their coaching activities for the future and took honestly a perfectly good program, and I don't know if my colleagues would agree, and completely redid it. Maybe blew it up. I don't know if that's the right term, but they took an award-winning program and really changed it up. So we're going to hand control over to Stephanie and Eva and continue on with the case study.
Yeah, we've already been touching on some of the elements of the story, and it is a fascinating story as I look back, and Evie and I have had many conversations about what we went through, what we experienced, and how we worked together to really modernize GSK's coaching strategy. It's not every day that a leader in an organization gets a chance to create a strategy and the processes and implement it and then recreate. And I was very fortunate to have that experience. The first creation actually started in 2006. I was in a role that I absolutely loved, talking about leadership development. I was the head of leadership development for the US pharmaceutical business. So I focused on helping to develop key talent who aspired to be everything from first line sales leaders all the way through vice presidents and senior vice presidents. Coaching was one slice of what I did in my day job? Well, I think many of us have had this experience where there's an email that is sent and it changes your world. And in 2006, that email was sent from an intern, a very smart intern, an intern who is working on my team. I asked her, gave her a template of what to say in the email. I asked her to reach out to each individual coaching client to ask them for some data that we were preparing for the head of HR. Well, she was efficient and she decided to send the email to all the coaching clients all at once.
Oh no.
She not only did that, I don't know how this happened, but the president of the US business was included on the email. So as you can imagine, as soon as that email was sent, I received a phone call from the head of HR saying, Stephanie, I'm getting a lot of questions. I'm getting questions about why are these people working with a coach? How much are we paying the coaches? Who are the coaches? What are they being coached on? What's the total cost of it? So as you can imagine, it was a firestorm. And unfortunately, I had no answers whatsoever. So what was a slice of what I used to do became what my team did full time until we figured out and put in place a coaching strategy and processes to make sure that the executive leadership team was very comfortable and confident that coaching was used to develop key talent. So that's what we set out to do. The first thing I had to do is ask some questions to find out some answers. And it was scary, to say the least, of what I was hearing. So when I asked the question about who was working with a coach, the answers were, not all the time, but people were working with a coach because that coach was working with a senior vice president. So they thought it was a good idea that they work with the same coach so they understood things better, which, as you can imagine, made my skin crawl, as I'm sure it's making your skin crawl right now. I also asked, how long are you working with these coaches? And what I found was people were working with the coaches anywhere from 6 months to 5 years or longer. One thing that we as coaches pride ourselves on is not creating dependency. And then I asked about the coaching credentials, and they were all over the place. Some people were coaches, some people were certified through the ICF or EMCC. Some were trainers that were delivering leadership development programs, so they thought it would be a good idea to add coaching into the mix. So it was just all over the place. So the first thing we needed to do, which we did, is we dusted off the strategy. And a couple years before this, we moved coaching from performance management coaching to investing in talent development. So that was the first thing we needed to do, is remind people of where we chose to invest our coaching and our coaching resources. Then we went through a very thorough process where we vetted the coaches. We had them coach our internal team to demonstrate their coaching skills. And we asked them to also provide information about their coaching practice and philosophies. We decided before we even started that to align ourselves with the ICF and EMCC, because not only is there the confidentiality, the code of ethics, but there's also really strong coaching competencies that we believe leaders need to use as leaders. So we wanted our coaches to role model that. And lastly, we set up a standard, again, that word standard, but we set up a standard process of 8 months of coaching, 2 tripartite meetings, 360, a lot of what we talk about today. So that was great. And it worked really, really well. It worked so well that GSK evolved and globalized coaching along with leadership development. And the head of coaching asked to share what I was doing in the US market, and she scaled it, which was a great compliment, and I'm really appreciative. So that's where the internal coaching team came to be. And we've worked together to coach leaders ourselves, as well as I was eventually managing a process I set up 14 years ago. So let's fast forward 14 years. And I took the job as an internal coach, working alongside Evie and a few other internal coaches. I think we had a change of 3 CEOs, and maybe I've had 4 or 5 jobs between then. But I went back to being an internal coach because of my passion for it. And Evie and I started talking in 2018, right, Evie? 2018, where we were going to different conferences around the world, and we were starting to see signals how the coaching industry was changing and evolving. And Evie and I remember on a Zoom call, because she's in the UK and I'm in Philadelphia, we said, you know, if we want to continue to be on the cutting edge and have an award-winning coaching strategy, we need to stay ahead of this. And it's probably going to make us feel uncomfortable, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for GSK. It's the right thing to do for the leaders. So Evie and I talked to our leadership, and we said, you know, we've got this idea. What do you think? And they said, well, go ahead, put some ideas down and let it, you know, share with us what you're thinking, the upsides, the downsides. So we did some scenario planning. And if I'm honest, it never really got a lot of traction at the time. There were other priorities, there were other things going on, which was fine. Evie and I decided to keep our eye on the external marketplace and see how it evolved. Well, the second time we got a question wasn't an email, it was just a direct question. And the direct question was from a new senior executive leader who said, what's the impact of coaching? What's the return on investment in coaching? Well, as you can imagine, Evie and I were prepared that time for that conversation. We did have the data because the tracking systems and infrastructure was put into place. We also were ready because we were looking at the signals. What we weren't so sure about, and this is where we had to learn, is we had to figure out how to use digital technology. And that was new for us. We created a vision where we wanted to use digital technology to create an excellent consumer experience in the coaching space that would maintain the high quality coaching, and we needed to simplify things. So we needed to find a partner that could manage everything from matching all the way through metrics. We had a lot of internal conversations because, as you can imagine, we were doing really well with what we had in place. We were getting a lot of accolades for it. So we were very conscientious about what we set out to change and why we were setting out to make those changes. We knew we needed to go from the traditional engagements of 8 months more to a performance-focused engagement, which was much shorter, 6 months, and used internal data, which is quite different than the traditional way. We also wanted to look at how we can modernize for that whole consumer experience, from the moment a leader says, I want to work with a coach, all the way through how they're getting feedback or giving us feedback about the coaching experience. And if we were honest with ourselves, the data showed that we had coaching that was regionally concentrated. And if we truly wanted to develop and accelerate the development of our leaders, we needed a more global network of coaches. So we set out to do that. We went through a very thorough RFP process. And Evie, we've had so many conversations about this. We started with 25 companies. There's a lot of really good companies throughout the world that are moving in this, where they have a wonderful network of coaches. We filtered that to focus on 8 companies that presented their ideas. And we eventually, after a very rigorous, very data-driven decision-making model, we selected CoachSource. It was a very competitive situation. We learned a lot, though. We learned a lot. We learned what we didn't know, which was how does technology even play a role in coaching? And we were thankful for our partners because they taught us a lot along the way. What we learned is that it's really important to know your company's culture, and what the company that you work in is ready for, and make sure there's a really good alignment between that and your strategic partner. We also learned that it's important to trust the process. We invited companies that knew GSK really, really well, and we invited companies to the process that didn't. And CoachSource was a new partner to us at GSK. So we took a leap of faith, and I'm glad that we did take a leap of faith because we worked really hard together to set things up. We also learned that you have to stay true to what matters. And Evie and I and the rest of the team had a lot of conversations. And one thing we never, ever wavered on, although it was tested, is we never wavered on the quality of the coaches. We maintained that level of a PCC, ICF certification, EMC equivalent. And I think that's really important, even though it was tested along the way. And we built it, like the Field of Dreams. If you've ever seen that Kevin Costner movie, we built the field. Before we left the company, we built the field. Well, they don't always come. So another really important learning is that change management all along the way, even when you've got something that's great and actually upgraded and enhanced from where you were starting, change management is always important to bring others along so they understand how to tap into the high quality coaches so they can continue to grow as a leader and perform. So that's part of the story. There's even more in terms of we really wanted to stretch ourselves and look at how we can use technology in the coaching space. And Evie led some of that work, which she'll also share with you. Evie?
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, so we did a couple of things to modernize the coaching practice at GSK. And in that, there was this experimentation, I would say, looking at what can technology do for us. When we already had award-winning coaching practice recognized by the ICF Prism Award. And also in the context of a changing organization, as well as a rapidly changing external market. I would like to talk about these two experiments, which was all about bringing technology and actually first looking at the market. What can technology do for us in our coaching practice? And we had two intentions. One was further democratize coaching. So therefore we were looking at coaching boards, which could make coaching even more accessible in the organization. And the other one was really about how can we make the back office operation more streamlined, more easy to manage by finding a coaching management system, we call it platform, integrated platform, to make life easy for us. So let me talk about this experiment, and I'm saying experiment because we were very clear. We don't want a traditional big corporate heavy project. We wanted something which is more agile. We wanted to have a very simple objective, which is look at coaching bots on the market and also look at what coaching management systems exist, then come together, make some decisions, put them into practice if it feels right, or if needed, adjust our objectives along the way. So these were our two objectives. And the good news was for us that there was a very supportive environment, because our leadership back then, kind of the top leaders, were very much into whatever technology can do for us in any aspect of our business life, really grab the possibility. So part of this modernization was what can it do in the learning space and specifically for us in coaching. And by then, our learning colleagues already implemented a couple of successful initiations. So, for example, implementing what we call Keep Growing Campus, a one-stop shop for technology-enabled learning available in different languages across the globe for any GSK employees. So our interest in the coaching bot specifically was driven by this will to democratize coaching, make it available. And that was a long-standing strategy GSK has been having. The intention was to complement the existing coaching portfolio with the coaching bot. And we already had 3 modalities in coaching in place. Leaders as coaches. So from early on, there was a very clear leadership strategy that our leaders can't know it all. They rather need to have the skills to enable their teams and their direct reports to think for themselves. And there was also an appreciation how coaching skills can do that for the business. Alongside that, we also have internal coaching, a quite sizable internal coaching portfolio or faculty who are basically leaders trained as professional coaches who alongside their day job, and you could see that in the summary slides of Brian, actually provide professional coaching in GSK mid-level leaders. And then executive coaches for the top of the house, mostly drawn by external coaches. So you could say, why complement? Because of the scale of our internal, just to give you a taste for the scale, roughly 1,900 assignments a year. That means 1,900 leaders, typically, or high potential talent benefiting from coaching in an organization which is present in all continents with 100,000 employees. So you can see there is a lot of improvement. And there was this very strong belief, if we find a good coaching app, we could make coaching accessible as a complement to what our leaders do day in, day out, which is they use the coaching skills in the way they lead their teams during the day. Okay, so finding the coaching bot and the coaching platform was actually coinciding with my participation on what we call Future of Coaching Collaboration, which is a UK-based organization. And I was representing GSK as one of the buyers in a subgroup which was looking at the digitalization of coaching. For those who don't know Future of Coaching Collaboration, that's an organization that is intending to bring together academia, leading professional bodies, buyers, and coaches, so providers, whether coaching houses or individual coaches. And the aim of the organization is to innovate, to collaborate, to professionalize in order to safeguard the coaching profession. And within this subgroup with FCC, we were mapping out what's out there in the market when it comes to digital coaching solutions. Then I will share what we came up with. It's probably more than a year old now. And when we published this on behalf of FCC, we already knew this map was outdated because this market is absolutely, as technology would expect, is changing moment by moment. But I think there are some learnings that I would like to highlight from this quite busy map. One is that it's a crowded market and we rather pay attention to that. And the most crowded segment is the top left box, which actually shows, again, take it as a sample of everything else that is out there, gives you a sample of companies who sell human coaching via platform. And remember, we did this research before COVID, then a lot of coaching was already delivered through some sort of digital connection, whether Zoom or Teams or Skype or even phone calls, but it wasn't the norm as it is today. But even by then, many coaching companies realized that actually that's where the market is going. And especially for global corporates, that there is a growing demand for having coaching available in the local language, they needed to innovate. And what is really interesting, I think, and makes it very colorful, is that some of the digital companies realized coaching is a good business. So they entered the market. So you see in this segment genuinely strong coaching companies who use technology, and also some digital companies who enter this market and are really thriving in this market. Then there is another segment, which is more the bottom left, which is basically coaching management systems. So companies who either use the system and sell to other companies, or just companies who are entering the market to sell their coaching management system, either to big coaching houses like, may I say, I don't even know that, but probably companies like CoachSource, and definitely companies like us in GSK who have a bigger internet coaching practice. And the third segment, which is more the right side of the spectrum or of the slide, is companies who, or solutions which are non-human coach related, either pure technology, or some VR or AI coaching solutions, or tools that are sold and specifically for coaches who want to complement their coaching practice by using some technology. So that was our focus in our experiment. So what is out there that we could bring in as a solution without human coaches? And what I found there was, and it's not on this map, but there was another version of the map which was listing all sorts of apps or different kind of digital solutions which were labeled as coaching. However, what we found is not very few are genuinely coaching solutions in the sense, for example, an EMCC would define it. Many were rather learning resources with amazing apps, amazing videos or mini training series or other resources, which I think is very useful to have. But within GSK, with the Keep Growing Campus, we already had that ticked. So that was off our list. And the other thing which I learned was that this is a market where innovation is happening. And to find something that is ready-made and you can just plug and play is not so easy to find, which actually GSK was looking for. Coming back to what we wanted to do, what I found and what I proposed to my leadership team was, I think, an amazing narrative coaching web app, and also a platform with avatars to aid coaching conversations. So the narrative coaching web app is basically a technology which anyone from, if a company uses that, can engage with. And it asks, it will contract with you, it will ask questions, have you think through whatever you want to think through and arrive at your own decisions and solutions. The difference is it's basically the app asking the questions and you need to type in your answers. However, when I experimented with it, I thought it was quite an impressive tool. The bottleneck with the tool was that it was available back then in 2 languages. And I was looking for something that at least had 10, 12 different languages, for the major languages available. The other thing I suggested to experiment with was a VR solution, which is, I could see our training of some of our very capable and interested internal coaches who would specialize and really have clients who have relationship issues or things, maybe they want to increase their efficiency, how they engage their stakeholders, which is quite typical as a request in coaching in our organization, which is very, very network driven. And I could see how they provide a short coaching intervention, and the clients can go into this platform and create their avatars and prepare for the coaching conversation, have the internal coach work with them, and really, really speed up the coaching engagement with this tool, which is evidence-based to speed up insight and change. So this is what we do on the bot side. And then on the platform side, we launched an RFP and we found some really good solutions, which I could see how they could help us to manage our internal coaching practice, which has yearly 1,500 assignments and roughly 400 internal coaches, where my biggest concern was how do we keep the practice professional enough in terms of having data, how much supervision our coaches attend, how many clients they have a year, and so on. And we have a back office, or used to have a back office, which human resource heavy, and we wanted something that is more technology enabled. Even the thinking about perhaps the clients self-selecting their coaches rather than being a central team who does all the matching for them. What happened with these experiments when they were presented for approval? The world changed around us. So there was a major strategy change within the company, which meant that the global big corporate has decided to demerge into two mid-sized companies. And as you would expect, the learning strategy, to decide about the learning strategy just before that major scale change was not good timing. So all similar kind of modernizing ideas were put on hold. And my focus shifted from bringing in stuff that could complement the already well-established coaching practice to how can our internal coaches be up to their game to support the changing organization and the leaders they will be working with in this quite large scale change. So basically none of these ideas have progressed from there onwards. And yet I think there are some good learnings. Let me share what I learned along this journey. So technology continues to disrupt every aspect of our life, and coaching is one of those. So we really keep our pulse on where the market is going. The other one is that all these experiments in the digitization of coaching is happening now, meaning if you're hungry to shape that, if you're interested to shape that, I think this is the time to find your experiments and shape the future. As an internal practitioner, I also think that while we have this role of being curious and looking outside and exploring and bringing in innovation, we also need to be mindful where the business is going and what does the business really require. So we are not creating our hobbies within the company, but it's truly serving what the business needs in the moment. So that really requires letting go some of the projects you fell in love, but really truly hold the business in your forefront. As a practitioner, coaching practitioner, I think technology is a friend. And what we've seen with Stephanie over the years, coaching is expanding, and the technological solutions will add on the solid foundation of human coaches. And maybe in 5 years or 3, 4, 5 years time, I will drag this sentence, but for now, midterm at least, I think there is absolute legitimacy for all these human and non-human coaching to coexist. Two more things which are more technical is actually finding a plug and play solution with, especially for big corporates who have their own system. Well, I think that's quite a big aspiration, and implementing any of these solutions will actually require proper thinking through how you integrate the different systems, and you definitely will need your IT colleagues to support you. And then the last thought that I would want to leave you with is the ethical dilemmas involved in anything you do in the digital platform. And I know some of the leading bodies in the coaching field are already thinking about this territory, but I think more to come there. So I'm really curious where it will take us. But for now, let me leave it there and hand over to Brian for the final closing remarks.
Fantastic case study. And of course, if we were in live audience, this is the part where you'll be getting many, many questions at this point. I actually had a question that I bet someone in the audience might be wondering if you care to comment on is, you're both on your own with your own firms now, but this was planned and known ahead of time while you were building this program, wasn't it? Tell me more about what was it like creating this, but also working yourself out of a job, perhaps, for each of you?
Evie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to go. And that's an interesting question, Brian. So I joined the coaching team, the global coaching team, almost at the birth, around 2012. And I've seen it growing from the foundations, getting into its pivotal moment with the ICF accreditation, and then having the new CEO and needing to change it, and then professionalizing it further. And it's really interesting, but I feel like I've done a lot internally, and I'm quite hungry for doing something externally more.
Yeah, right.
And I also feel that probably it's better. It's been actually quite a long time, and to hand the button over to somebody who has different ideas, maybe a fresh perspective, is probably was really high time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I actually will go back to my dad, who I was very close to when he was alive. He always said to me, Stephanie, leave wherever you are in a better place. Mm. And I took that to heart in everything that I've done. So the opportunity to lead the process to modernize and globalize the GSK coaching strategy, I really took it seriously and took it to heart, and made sure every step of the way the team I was working with was making really good decisions so that the leaders at GSK would be in great hands. And I believe they are in great hands.
Brian, if I could just follow up on that.
There were high moments and there were sad moments, but overall it was a great experience. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I think, what Evie and Stephanie are reminding me and all of us as coaches is that we need to create and invite positive disruption into our own lives and into our own coaching practices, whether we're internal or external. So if we think we're coaches and we're doing the same thing over and over forever, we're probably not demonstrating and experiencing what we're asking all of our coaching clients to do. Mm-hmm. Second, the integrity and the intention of what Evie and Stephanie created lives on. We're about a year after the initial start of this relationship and crafting the new coaching program and experience. And while, as Evie said, it's an experiment, it has some agility to it, the integrity of it lives on. So I think as coaches, we can pat ourselves on the back for what we create doesn't disappear just because we don't put our hands on it and lead it 2 months, 3 months, a year later. It does have a legacy, and people and organizations continue to have and experience tremendous, favorable, positive impact for what we created.
That's fantastic. And that really is actually a perfect way to lead to our final point that we wanted to share with everybody here is coaches should be disrupting themselves, right? The future is always changing. Of course, maybe a year and a half ago, we had no idea that we'd be entering a global pandemic. But when you think about the challenges that we have in the world, so with the onset, of course, of the pandemic and the uncertainty about what the future could look like beyond the pandemic, when you think about the social justice movement and what effects that has had, when you look at all of these technological changes to our field and to the world in general, it occurred to us that there's really very few professions that are well suited to take this on as beyond coaches, beyond yourselves and ourselves and what we do, that we are people well suited to take this on and to guide our leaders and those that we're coaching accordingly through this type of unknown, uncertain future. That's exactly what we're well suited to do. So I wanted to remind us that this is our time as coaches to continue to help lead our leaders, our coachees, our clients into this new future. So we thank you for your time with us today, and you could certainly look any of us, you could look any of us up on LinkedIn and connect with us, and we would look forward to meeting with you. Thank you, Jeff, Eva, Stephanie, thank you all for being part of this today, and we look forward to staying in touch. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.